I am Natalie Warren, 34 years old, owner of Sapphire Luxury Hotels and Elite Catering. My brother James and I have always been close, surviving our parents' divorce and building our lives together. When he got engaged, I happily put down $65,000 as a deposit for his dream wedding at my finest venue. Then last week, his wedding planner called with news that shattered my heart. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stay for a wedding disaster that taught me the true meaning of family and self-respect. James and I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Boston. He was only 2 years older than me, but he always took his role as big brother seriously. I remember how he would walk me to school every day, holding my hand at crosswalks and making sure the other kids never bullied me. We had that special sibling bond that some people never experience in their lifetime. Our childhood took a sharp turn when our parents divorced. I was 12 and James was 14. The split was messy, full of late-night arguments and slammed doors. Our father, Robert, was a workaholic accountant who rarely made time for family dinners. Our mother, Linda, felt neglected and eventually found companionship elsewhere. Neither of them realized how their separation would impact us. After the divorce was finalized, our parents settled into a Cold War. They communicated only when absolutely necessary, using us as messengers. Tell your father he is late on the child support again, or ask your mother if I can pick you up an hour earlier on Sunday. James and I quickly learned to rely on each other instead of our distracted parents. The financial situation at home became strained. Mom had been a stay-at-home parent and suddenly needed to find work with outdated skills. Dad moved into a small apartment and seemed more interested in his new girlfriend than paying bills on time. By the time I was 16, I was working after school at a local diner. James took a job stocking shelves at the grocery store. We would pool our earnings to buy groceries when Mom was short on cash. "We only have each other," Nat James would tell me as we counted coins on our bedroom floor. "No matter what happens, I will always have your back." That promise carried us through high school and beyond. When I decided to pursue hospitality management in college, James was my biggest cheerleader. He had opted to skip college and went straight into construction, working his way up from apprentice to foreman by the time he was 23. He would send me a portion of his paycheck each month to help with my textbooks and living expenses. My career path was challenging but rewarding. I started as a front desk agent at a boutique hotel while finishing my degree. The manager noticed my dedication and promoted me to supervisor within a year. By 27, I had worked my way up to director of operations at one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. That was when I took my biggest risk. With my savings and a small business loan, I purchased a struggling historic hotel that was on the verge of foreclosure. The Sapphire Grand had gorgeous architecture but terrible management. I worked 18-hour days for 2 years straight, renovating the property and rebuilding its reputation. James was there every step of the way. He used his construction connections to help me find reliable contractors at fair prices. On weekends, he would come by with his crew to handle small projects free of charge. "Consider it an investment in our future," he would say with a wink. The Sapphire Grand became profitable in its third year under my ownership. I used that success to secure funding for a second location, then a third. By the time I turned 30, I had 5 luxury hotels in my portfolio and had launched Elite Catering, a high-end food service company that specialized in weddings and corporate events. Throughout my entrepreneurial journey, James remained my rock. He celebrated each milestone and consoled me through every setback. When a pipe burst at the Sapphire Boston location, causing thousands in water damage, James drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to help supervise the emergency repairs. Our parents took notice of our success but in different ways. Dad suddenly wanted to reconnect, inviting us to dinner at expensive restaurants and introducing us to his business associates. Mom became oddly competitive, comparing her modest achievements to our lucky breaks. Neither of them acknowledged that their children had succeeded despite their absence, not because of their support. Then Melissa Blake entered the picture. James met her at a charity golf tournament where my catering company was providing the lunch service. She was beautiful, polished, and came from old money. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships across the Northeast, and her mother was on the board of several prestigious cultural foundations. From the beginning, something felt off about Melissa. She spoke to the catering staff with a dismissive tone that made me uncomfortable. When James introduced us, her smile did not reach her eyes. "Oh, you are the little sister who works in hotels. How quaint," she said, looking around as if searching for someone more important to talk to. James was completely smitten. Within weeks, he was spending all his free time with Melissa. She introduced him to her country club friends and took him to exclusive restaurants where the waitstaff treated him like an outsider. Gradually, I noticed changes in my brother. He started using phrases like the right people and our kind of establishment. He traded his reliable pickup truck for a luxury SUV he could barely afford. Our weekly sibling dinners became monthly, then rare occurrences. When we did get together, Melissa usually accompanied him, checking her watch and sighing loudly when our conversations drifted to childhood memories or inside jokes she could not participate in. Melissa and her mother, Eleanor, made no secret of their disdain for me. At a dinner celebrating James's birthday, Eleanor asked pointed questions about my little hotel business and seemed disappointed when I explained the scale of my operations. "Well, I suppose anyone can succeed in America these days," she said with a tight smile. "Though there is a difference between new money and established families." Melissa nodded in agreement. "It must be exhausting working in service. All those complaints and dirty rooms." She shuddered delicately. "I could never." I tried to explain that. As the owner, I rarely cleaned rooms myself anymore, but James interrupted. "Natalie has always been a hard worker," he said, as if apologizing for my character trait. "She will probably sell the business once she settles down and starts a family." The comment stung. James knew how passionate I was about my career. I had never expressed any desire to settle down or sell my companies. In that moment, I realized how far he had drifted from the brother who once knew me better than anyone. Despite the growing distance, I still loved James fiercely. I told myself that his behavior was a phase, that he was just trying to fit into Melissa's world. Surely the brother who had held my hand at crosswalks was still in there somewhere. On a crisp autumn evening, James called me with excitement in his voice. She said, "Yes, Nat, Melissa agreed to marry me." His happiness was contagious, and I found myself genuinely thrilled for him, despite my reservations about his fiancée. "That is wonderful news, James. Tell me everything. How did you propose?" I curled up on my sofa, ready to hear the romantic details. James launched into the story of his elaborate proposal at the Blake family's summer home in the Hamptons. He had arranged for a private chef string quartet and thousands of rose petals scattered across the beach. The ring was a 4-carat diamond that had cost him nearly 6 months of savings. "It sounds perfect," I said, ignoring the knot in my stomach. The extravagance seemed unlike the practical brother I had grown up with. "Have you set a date yet?" "Melissa wants a June wedding. Her mother says the best venues book up a year in advance, so we need to start planning immediately." He paused. "There is just one problem. The places Eleanor suggested are either already booked or way beyond our budget." I could hear the stress in his voice. James made a good living as a construction manager, but the Blakes lived in a different financial stratosphere. I knew he was worried about measuring up to their expectations. "What about the Sapphire Grand?" I suggested. "The ballroom can hold 300 guests, and the gardens would be beautiful for a June ceremony." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I do not know, Nat. Melissa has her heart set on the Rosewood or the Peninsula." "The Sapphire Grand was just rated above both in Luxury Travel magazine," I pointed out. "And as the owner's brother, you would get preferential booking and significant discounts." After more hesitation, James promised to discuss it with Melissa. 3 days later, he called back. "Melissa will consider the Sapphire Grand, but she wants to see it first, and she is concerned about the catering. Her mother knows several celebrity chefs." "Tell her Elite Catering can create any menu she desires," I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "We have 2 Michelin-trained chefs on staff." The tour of the Sapphire Grand was tense. Melissa and Eleanor walked through the grand ballroom with critical eyes, whispering to each other and taking notes. My hotel manager, Anthony, presented our most luxurious wedding package while I showed them the bridal suite with its panoramic city views. "The space is adequate," Eleanor conceded reluctantly. "But the color scheme is all wrong for Melissa's vision. Would you be willing to reupholster the ballroom chairs and replace the draperies?" I blinked in surprise. "We could certainly add chair covers and decorative elements to match your color palette," I offered. "Complete reupholstery of 200 chairs would be quite costly and unnecessary." Melissa pursed her lips. "Mother, perhaps we should continue looking at the Rosewood." James shot me a pleading look. I recognized that expression from our childhood, when he needed me to compromise to keep the peace. With a deep breath, I smiled at my future sister-in-law. "Why don't you show me your Pinterest board? I am sure we can find creative solutions to transform the space into exactly what you are envisioning." That concession opened the floodgates. Over the next hour, Melissa detailed her dream wedding, which seemed to have been lifted straight from a royal ceremony. She wanted imported flowers, custom lighting installations, a champagne fountain, and a 10-tier cake. When Anthony discreetly provided a preliminary estimate, James went pale. Even with my owner's discount, the wedding would cost well over $100,000. That was when I made a decision that would change everything. "As my gift to you both, I said I would like to cover the venue and catering deposit, $65,000 toward your special day." James's eyes widened. "Nat, that is too generous. We cannot accept that." But Melissa and Eleanor exchanged glances. "That would be lovely," Melissa said quickly. "We accept your generous offer." Even for a successful business owner like myself, $65,000 was a significant amount. It represented the profit from several months of operations. But I told myself it was worth it to support my brother and perhaps build a bridge with my new extended family. The planning process began immediately. Melissa hired Victoria Hayes, one of the city's most exclusive wedding planners, to coordinate the details. I expected to be included in the major decisions given my financial contribution and ownership of the venue, but I quickly discovered I was mistaken. Melissa scheduled tastings with my catering team without inviting me. Victoria sent emails about architectural changes to the ballroom without copying me on the correspondence. When I asked James about being excluded, he seemed uncomfortable. "Melissa just wants to make sure everything is perfect," he explained. "She feels there might be a conflict of interest if you are too involved, since it is your business." I swallowed my hurt feelings and tried to respect their process. However, the situation became increasingly difficult as Melissa and Eleanor made demanding and often unreasonable requests. They insisted that my staff remove a historic chandelier from the ballroom because it did not match Melissa's color scheme. They demanded that the kitchen create 15 different sample menus before making a selection. They scheduled appointments with my already overworked venue coordinator at odd hours, often canceling at the last minute. Through it all, I maintained my professionalism. I wanted this wedding to be perfect for James, even if it meant tolerating Melissa's bridezilla behavior. My staff loyal to me did their best to accommodate the endless demands, though I could see the strain in their faces. "You are a saint," Anthony told me, after a particularly difficult meeting with Eleanor. "If she were not your future family, I would have shown her the door weeks ago." The $65,000 deposit was officially processed 6 months before the wedding date. I signed the paperwork myself, specifying that it covered the venue rental, basic catering package, and hotel rooms for the wedding party. Additional costs for upgrades, special requests, and guest accommodations would be billed separately. As the wedding date approached, I expected to receive my formal invitation. When the 3-month mark passed with no envelope in my mailbox, I casually mentioned it to James during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. "Oh, the invitations went out last week," he said vaguely. "Melissa handled the guest list. I am sure yours is on the way." Another month passed. No invitation arrived. I told myself there must have been a mix-up with the mail, or that perhaps they assumed I did not need a formal invitation since I was so closely involved with the venue. Still, a sense of unease began to grow in the pit of my stomach. The first truly alarming sign came when my cousin Dana called to thank me for her invitation to James's wedding. "The invitation is gorgeous," she gushed. "That gold foil embossing must have cost a fortune. And the handwritten note from Melissa was such a nice touch." My heart sank. I had received neither an invitation nor a handwritten note. When I checked with other family members, I discovered they had all received their invitations weeks ago. That evening I called James directly. "Is there something I should know about the wedding?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everyone else seems to have received their invitations." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Melissa has been handling the guest list," he said finally. "I will check with her and get back to you." 3 days later, I still had not heard from him. I decided to take a more direct approach and texted him. "Need to finalize my attendance details for your wedding. Should I bring a +1? What color dress would coordinate with the wedding party?" His response was vague and evasive. "Still working out some details. Will let you know soon." Around the same time, I noticed other concerning patterns. The bridal shower had apparently happened the previous weekend, but I had not been invited. Photos appeared on social media showing James, Melissa, and both families at what looked like an engagement photo shoot in the botanical gardens. Again, I had not been included or even informed. During a routine check-in with my hotel staff about the wedding arrangements, I learned that Melissa had requested a meeting to review the seating chart for the reception. Curious, I asked to see a copy. My name was nowhere to be found. "There must be a mistake," I told my events coordinator. "I am the groom's sister." She looked uncomfortable. Miss Blake was very specific about the seating arrangements. She personally reviewed each name multiple times. The situation came to a head when our parents organized a family dinner 1 month before the wedding. It was the first time in years that both my mother and father would be in the same room, a testament to the significance of James's marriage. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant downtown, with James, Melissa, both sets of parents, and me in attendance. From the moment we sat down, the tension was palpable. Melissa kept whispering to her mother and shooting glances in my direction. When the conversation turned to wedding details, they spoke in vague terms, changing the subject whenever I asked specific questions. During the main course, Eleanor made a comment that sent a chill down my spine. "It is so important to have the right atmosphere at a wedding," she said, swirling her wine glass. "The proper guests, the right connections. A wedding is not just a celebration, It is a statement about your place in society. Melissa nodded in agreement. Some people simply do not understand the social implications of a high-profile event, she added, looking directly at me. Running hotels is one thing, but appreciating true elegance is quite another. My father, never particularly perceptive about social dynamics, laughed uncomfortably. Natalie understands elegance just fine. Her hotels are top-rated in the luxury category. Eleanor's smile did not reach her eyes. Yes, but there is a difference between serving the elite and being one of them, is there not? The implication was clear. In their eyes, I was the help, not a social equal. I looked at James, expecting him to defend me, but he was studying his plate intently, avoiding eye contact. My mother, perhaps sensing my distress, attempted to change the subject. Natalie has been so generous with her contribution to the wedding. The venue looks absolutely stunning. Melissa's response was swift and cutting. Yes, the financial arrangement has been helpful, though we have had to make substantial upgrades to bring the space up to standard. I felt as if I had been slapped. My flagship hotel, the jewel of my business empire, was being described as substandard by a woman who had never worked a day in her life. The Sapphire Grand is a five-star establishment, I said evenly. We host diplomats, celebrities, and yes, society weddings on a regular basis. Of course you do, dear Eleanor, patted my hand condescendingly. And we appreciate your establishment's effort to accommodate our vision. After dinner, I tried to speak with James privately, but Melissa intercepted us. James, darling, we need to discuss the rehearsal dinner with Daddy, she said, pulling him away. The look she gave me was triumphant, almost smug. Later that week, I received a disturbing message from a friend who worked at the country club where Melissa was a member. She had overheard Melissa laughing with her bridesmaids about the hotel girl who thought she was invited to the wedding. She actually thinks she will be sitting at the family table, Melissa had reportedly said. As if we would want someone like her front and center in the photos. But we need to keep her happy until the big day, since she controls the venue. Another bridesmaid had asked, what about the money she contributed? $65,000 is a lot to take without including her. Melissa's response chilled me. That money is already spent. What is she going to do, ask for it back? Besides, James says she is loaded. She will get over it. I confronted James that evening, calling him and demanding answers. Am I invited to your wedding or not? I asked bluntly. Because from what I am hearing, Melissa has other ideas. James sighed heavily. Nat, it is complicated. Melissa and her mother have very specific ideas about the guest list. They are concerned about maintaining a certain atmosphere. An atmosphere that does not include your only sister. The sister who gave you $65,000 toward this wedding. My voice cracked with emotion. You do not understand the pressure I am under, James said defensively. Melissa's family moves in important circles. This wedding could open doors for both of us. Since when do you care about important circles? I demanded. What happened to the brother who used to say we only needed each other? People grow up, Natalie. They change. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of holding on to the past. His words were like daggers to my heart. Is that Melissa talking or you? I asked quietly. This conversation is not productive, he said, his voice cold. I need to go. Melissa and I have an appointment with the florist. As I hung up the phone, I felt a deep sense of loss. The brother I had known and loved my entire life was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Still, I clung to the hope that this was temporary madness, that the real James would return once the wedding stress had passed. I decided to make one last attempt to salvage our relationship. I sent James a heartfelt email, reminding him of all we had been through together and expressing my hurt at being excluded from his important day. I assured him that I would continue to ensure the wedding venue and catering were perfect, regardless of my personal feelings, because that was what family did for each other. His response was brief and formal. "Thank you for your understanding. I will speak with Melissa about the guest list situation." Days passed, with no further communication. The wedding was now just 1 week away, and I had begun to accept that I might not be attending my own brother's ceremony despite providing the venue and a substantial financial contribution. Then came the phone call that would change everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. I was in the middle of a budget meeting with my executive team, but decided to answer in case it was related to the wedding. "Hello, is this Natalie Warren?" a professional female voice inquired. "Yes, speaking," I replied, stepping out of the conference room. "This is Victoria Hayes, the wedding planner for the Warren Blake ceremony scheduled at the Sapphire Grand next Saturday." Her tone was crisp and businesslike. "I am calling regarding your deposit payment of $65,000. My heart skipped a beat. Yes, is there an issue with the payment? I had processed it myself months ago, but perhaps there was some administrative problem. Not exactly, Victoria hesitated. I have been instructed by the family to inform you that your invitation to the wedding has been cancelled. However, they would like to retain the deposit you provided. The world seemed to stop. I gripped the hallway wall for support. Excuse me. Victoria cleared her throat uncomfortably. The family has decided to revise the guest list. Your attendance is no longer required. However, they wish to keep the venue and catering arrangements as planned, utilizing the deposit you already paid. Which family? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who exactly made this decision? Miss Blake and her mother provided the instruction, Victoria replied. I was told that Mr. Warren is aware and has agreed to the arrangement. James had agreed to uninvite me from his wedding but keep my $65,000, my own brother. The same brother who once gave me half his sandwich every day at school because he knew I was too shy to ask for more food. The brother who held my hand at our grandmother's funeral and promised we would always have each other. May I ask why I managed fighting to keep my voice steady? Victoria paused again, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. I was informed that your presence might distract from the event's intended atmosphere. Miss Blake felt that the family dynamics might create tension on her special day. Family dynamics, I repeated incredulously. I am his sister, his only sibling. Miss Blake also mentioned something about your professional connection to the venue, potentially confusing guests about your role. Victoria sounded like she was reading from a script. She specifically mentioned concerns about you being perceived as staff rather than family given your ownership of the establishment. The cruelty of the statement knocked the wind out of me. After years of hard work building my business from nothing, my success was being used against me. I was too associated with service industry work to be worthy of attending my brother's wedding. Did James say this? I asked, needing to know if these were his words or Melissa's. I have not spoken directly with Mr. Warren about this matter, Victoria admitted. The instruction came from Miss Blake, but she assured me that Mr. Warren was in agreement. I closed my eyes, trying to process the betrayal. And the $65,000 I contributed. They expect to keep that money while excluding me from the event. Yes, Victoria confirmed, sounding increasingly uncomfortable. The deposit is considered non-refundable at this point, as stated in the contract. Miss Blake mentioned that you had presented it as a gift not contingent on your attendance. A wave of anger washed over me, clearing away the shock and hurt. This was beyond inconsiderate. It was calculating and cruel. They had used me for my venue, my catering services, and my money, all while planning to exclude me from the actual celebration. "Miss Warren, are you still there?" Victoria asked after a long silence. "Yes," I said, my voice suddenly calm and clear. "I want to confirm that I understand correctly. The bride and her mother have decided I am not welcome at my brother's wedding, despite my significant financial contribution and the fact that the event is being held at my property. And my brother has apparently agreed to this arrangement." "That is my understanding, yes," Victoria replied cautiously. I took a deep breath. "Victoria, I appreciate your calling me directly. I am guessing you did not know that I am the owner of the Sapphire Grand and Elite Catering." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. No, I was not aware of that connection. Miss Blake introduced you only as Mr. Warren's sister, who had contributed to the wedding fund. "I see," I said, a plan already forming in my mind. "In that case, I have a message I would like you to deliver to Miss Blake and my brother." "Of course," Victoria replied, her professional demeanor slipping as she realized the precarious position she was in. "Please tell them that I said to cancel the entire wedding." Victoria gasped. "But Miss Warren, you cannot. You are not the bride or groom. You do not have the authority to cancel the event." "No," I agreed. "But I own the venue, the catering company, and the hotel chain they booked for out-of-town guests. And according to Section 12 of the contract they signed, I reserve the right to cancel any event that violates our company's core values, which include respect and integrity." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "But the deposits, the guests, everything is arranged," Victoria stammered. "Yes, it is unfortunate timing," I said coolly. "Please inform Miss Blake and my brother that unless I receive a formal apology and invitation to the wedding by 5 p.m. today, the Sapphire Grand will no longer be available for their event. All deposits will be forfeited as per the cancellation policy they agreed to." "This is highly irregular," Victoria protested. "I have never encountered such a situation in my career." "Neither have I admitted. "But then, I have never been uninvited from my brother's wedding while being expected to fund it either. Please deliver my message promptly." I ended the call and leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Part of me could not believe what I had just done. Another part knew it was long overdue. For too long I had allowed Melissa and her family to treat me with disrespect while I smiled and accommodated their demands. For too long I had watched my brother transform into someone I barely recognized. The time for passivity was over. If James wanted to choose Melissa's elitist values over our lifelong bond, that was his right, but he would not do it in my venue with my money, while excluding me from the celebration. Within minutes my phone began to ring. It was James. I let it go to voicemail. Then Melissa called, then Eleanor. I ignored them all, returning to my budget meeting with a serene smile that confused my executive team. "Is everything all right?" Anthony asked, noticing my changed demeanor. "Actually, yes," I replied. "I think everything is finally becoming very clear." By 4:30 that afternoon, my office, phone, cell phone, and email were flooded with messages. Victoria had apparently delivered my ultimatum, unleashing a storm of panic. The wedding was only 10 days away. Over 200 guests had confirmed their attendance. Deposits had been paid to florists, photographers, and entertainers. At precisely 4:55, there was a commotion in the hotel lobby. James had arrived with Melissa and both sets of parents in tow. It was time to face the consequences of my stand. I instructed my assistant to escort the wedding party to my private conference room rather than my office.